Shelly, thank you very much. I would say that excellent speakers, excellent session you have moderated. I would say thanks to our Dr. Ahmed Said for connecting us with the European Space Agency also. And with Frank, he was talking about entrepreneurial. We are going to break, but just in 1 minute I need of you. So one of the richest men, I would say in reference to Frank, one of the richest men in China said, if you put the bananas and monkeys in front of monkeys, the monkeys will choose bananas because they don't know that the money can buy a lot of bananas, you know? So in fact, if you offer work and entrepreneurship to the people, they will choose the work because they don't know that this entrepreneurship can create more work for the people, yeah? So with this note, I would say that mostly the students, this awareness session, this symposium is particularly for our young students that they think about the entrepreneurship. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going for 10 minutes break, but before going to the break, I want to introduce our next moderator because then you will come by yourself the back. Mrs. Sara Kurudas. She is the professional speaker and corporate host who has given talks and presented high-profile events around the world. Sara, her clients include Red Bull, Samsung, BMW, Mercedes, SXSW, Gates Foundation, Microsoft Alliance, NASA, the Space Foundation, University of Cambridge, MIT. These are some which I am telling you. And on television, Sara is one of the hosts of Contact on Discovery Channel and the Science Channel. The show is broadcast in the United States and internationally. She is also a leading voice of space on various other television shows in UK and US, regularly appearing on Sky, BBC, CNN, People Television, ITV News, Channel 4 News, Channel 5 News, as well as on various documentaries on Discovery Channel and the Science Channel and UK shows, including Coast, BBC Morning Live, and Darren Brown. Sara is a passionate and well-accomplished presenter, able to make complex topics in science relatable to the general audience. She has extensive live television experience and began her career as a weather presenter and science correspondent with the BBC. You will learn more about her in our next roundtable discussion. This roundtable discussion will be about the development of space science entrepreneurial mindset among the researchers in the university. With apology from the Sara, we need a 10 minutes break. We need to put you for 5 to 10 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, and then we will come back. Thank you very much for your interest. Sara, I think you are there still, yeah? Sorry to putting you on wait.
Yes, I'm here. Enjoy your food.
Yeah, so sorry for putting you on wait, yeah? So, thank you. I request all of the physical attendees, please come and be seated. We need to start our new session. Wasim, please. Yeah. So, I would like, because we have the physical representation from here also, and our session is about, it's about the entrepreneurial mindset among researchers at universities, and the moderator is Sara.
Are we starting? I think we're starting, so I'm going to say thank you so much for having me here. This event's great, and I love what Shelley actually said earlier from the Space Symposium about how every citizen of planet Earth is part of this space economy. And I think when we think of space, we kind of think of what happened in the 1960s and the 70s, and it was a race between these two superpowers. But today, space is not just about exploring or politics, but it's also about an extension of life on Earth, and business and that entrepreneurial mindset are very much part of that. We're now living in what I like to call the entrepreneurial space age, which is driving forward this new era in space exploration. And one of the most exciting places where we need to see development within that is within the academic community. So how do we see development of space science, entrepreneurial mindsets amongst researchers? So this panel, there's a lot of us, there's 9 of us, but we're going to attempt to look at the current situation, where the success stories are, and what more is needed to enable success within the research community. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Greg Jack, who's the author of The Cosmos Economy, the Industrialization of Space, who's going to give us an overview of the sector elements. Dr. Jack.
Let me kind of bring up my deck for you. Hi, folks. And thank you for that introduction. I'm going to talk a little bit about the cosmos economy, the industrialization of space, and what that means. But first of all, I wanted to thank Dr. Sharif, and I wanted to thank Shelley for inviting me to this panel. I think it's going to be a really good discussion. We had a little conversation just during the break, and it looks like a lot of people are really engaged about this topic. So right off the bat, I'd like to just start talking about what the cosmos economy is, and if I can bring my slide back up again. There we go. What the cosmos economy is, and how that relates to the topic that we're talking about today. So there's a quote that I'd like to kind of share with you, and that's that every company is a space company. Some companies just don't know that yet. And if you start to think about it, that means that every customer of every company is also part of the space economy. And that's a good way to kind of premise what the space economy is all about, which is really building commercial activities and infrastructure in space for the future. So there's a lot of stuff going on in commercial space today, and there's been a lot of conversation about that earlier on in the conference today about satellites and communications and data analytics and on and on and on, imaging and so on and so forth. But I'm trying to look a little bit further. What's the commercial activities in space going to look like several decades hence? And so that's really what that's about. There's also been some conversation about partnerships between companies and nations and universities and NGOs and private investors. And we heard that over and over again, brought up in some of the presentations, how critical those types of partnering and team efforts are going to be in building the space economy. So I thought I'd start with some faulty assumptions. I'm not going to go over all of these here. Actually, the list I have for faulty assumptions is really long, but I'm just going to focus on a few quick things, because for those people thinking from an academic perspective about where some areas for future research, or if you're a student, some areas for future study, some of these might jog something in you, right? So one of the assumptions that people have is that humans are going to very easily reproduce, build families, build communities in space settlement. And that's a nice vision to have, but we really haven't proven that yet. Well over 60 women have gone to space, and we haven't had any that have been pregnant or who have given birth in space. We don't even know if that's quite possible. And there's some serious concern about that. So that needs to be resolved. On a more technical, less biologic and more technical level, shipping goods from space down to Earth-based markets, and by the way, there are no customers in space right now. All the customers are right here on planet Earth. Shipping goods from space down to Earth turns out to be a bigger deal than moving stuff up into space. And so that so-called down mass problem is a huge effort. And if somebody can find a way to solve that problem, to bring large shipments of commercial goods down to Earth-based markets, there's a tremendous opportunity there. The last thing on this faulty assumption is that space careers are only for engineers and tech folks. That's not the case, right? So a couple of things that I wanted to share with you very quickly, obviously, and you've heard some of these things before, which is that private sector space investing is up tremendously, 77% plus. Traditional non-space firms, firms you normally wouldn't think about as being space companies, are getting more and more involved in finding ways to stand up business operating units in space. And so, again, those are opportunities for new careers and new startups. Most space startups are non-US firms. In the first quarter of this year alone, $4.5 billion was invested in 77 space startups, right? And you heard from Kevin O'Connell a little bit earlier, you know, and when he was with the U.S. Department of Commerce, there was an estimate that was published about a $3 trillion space economy in 2040. And the last thing that on this list that I think is really important, again, for investors or new careerists going through university, demand for space industry talent is just mushrooming. It's growing. And it's not just in the engineering side. There's demand for business development folks, for marketing folks, for finance folks, for all kinds of management talent as well. So that's something really strong to consider. I'm not going to go over this list because lots of people have talked about these things, but through your own personal lens, if you have an interest in space-based agriculture, there's an opportunity for you to build a career or to build an investment. If you have an interest in medical procedures in space, again, all these different types of things are opening up for people in the space-based economy. The last thing I wanted to leave you with is that there's going to be many, many, many new frontiers in space. There's a perception that there's a space frontier, and once the space frontier gets built out with infrastructure or whatever it's going to be, that space, then it's going to be done. But that's not the case, because the solar system has so many resources and so many opportunities. So it's a multi-generational process for the new cosmos economy. I'm going to wind it up now and thank you. And I'll turn this back over to Sarah. Thanks, Sarah.
Sarah, you're muted.
I think you're muted, Sarah.
This is the joys of Skype in 2021. I think someone muted me. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was incredible. And you have, of course, outlined the opportunities in the commercial space sector and how it's going to develop over the coming decades. But as we look specifically at researchers, what more do you think can be done to encourage people to have that entrepreneurial mindset and to keep driving this industry forward?
All right, I muted myself again. I think part of the incentive for people to get involved in the space-based economy, first of all, is to accept the fact that those opportunities are real, and those opportunities are something where you can get involved with all kinds of firms and all kinds of efforts that are going on right now to build that space-based economy. So I think it's an exciting time for people, not only on the academic side and not only on the business side, but for those individuals who want to build a career in space. There's a lot of opportunities for them.
And how do we encourage people to take up those opportunities?
Oh, that's a big challenge. I mean, some people have their mindset on following some vertical industry. And for example, if the vertical industry they're interested in is medicine, how can you show them the possibility that maybe space medicine is something that they want to specialize in? And I used the example before about space-based agriculture, right? Well, there's a lot of opportunity in that people just don't really know about it. So I think the first step is to build a general sense of awareness and then give them some connections, some relationships with people who are already doing something like that so that they can do this as part of an organization. And like the Space Foundation can really help you get involved in some of these activities as you start to build your investment or build your career.
And it's interesting you say that, and the value of cooperation and people working together and how it can actually help to drive forward this entrepreneurial mindset. And it actually reminds me of what Dr. Kathy Thornton said beforehand when she was talking about how so many people have that linear plan in life, but it's the stuff you learn, well, you learn on the side, and then you realize how useful it is. And it's almost about having that open mind in driving forward entrepreneurialism.
I think you've really hit on something. I mean, the key word, and it was a buzzword for a long term, was pivot. And to have the flexibility to pivot, to see where maybe some prior assumptions that you had really aren't going to get you to where you want to go, but to also recognize new opportunities and say, gee, I have this capability set that I built up. How can I leverage those capabilities for something new? How can I take advantage of those new learnings that I've done in whatever career I have and make that a transition to a new career or a new business opportunity? That type of pivoting is really important, that flexibility. And some people are kind of reluctant to make changes in their lives, and other people are more open to that. And the more open you are to making changes, the more you'll be able to adapt to a new space economy.
I'm going to, at this point, bring in Professor Zahir Ali, who, among other things, is CEO of Material Mind, and he'll explain a few more of the other work projects he's involved in. But Zahir, can you just explain the current situation and the current hurdles we face, and how you think we can develop more that entrepreneurial mindset?
One of the things that's happened with space over the years is, as we've discussed, it's been dominated by governments and defense. So people often associate space with government and defense. And that makes sense. Back in the 60s, the only people who could bankroll something with that level of risk and had the need and, frankly, the risk to human life were governments. That's changed. Industry doesn't take risk at that level. It's right, that's a reality. You can't get a loan underwritten for that. But suddenly, what we have is we have almost a Moore's law for space. We might call it Elon's law or Tim's law, depending on whether Elon Musk is the one who drives it through SpaceX or Tim Ellis through 3D printed rockets with relativity space. But what SpaceX did that broke open this industry is they brought the cost of launch down from 20,000 per kilogram nominal to 2,000 per kilogram nominal. That 10x change is what has fundamentally enabled and driven the modern renaissance in commercial space enterprise. I just want to say, before I go on, thank you to Shelley, Dr. Sharif, the Director General, salam alaikum and bonjour to everyone from out here in Silicon Valley, which is where I sit. And we know a thing or two about entrepreneurship out here on the west coast of California. And what I would ask people to consider is that we need to look at space not as a vertical, but as a horizontal, cross-cutting enabler for all sectors of economics and business. Fundamentally, right now, to me, having lived through as a teenager, watching some of my classmates quit university at Cal to take jobs at Cisco or to start their own companies, license plates that said CEO at 18. That's what it feels like right now in space. This is the Wild West, the way the internet was in the early 2000s. We are in the Wild West of space right now in terms of space economics. This is a tremendously exciting time, and this is when you have the Tim Ellis mentality, raising $500 million at 28 years old. Why not us? Why not now? That's the mentality that entrepreneurs and young people need to have. I'm professor at ASU Thunderbird, and I just want to point out we've recently launched. We announced it 2 days ago. It's an initiative I've been working on for a little while, and we've launched the first Executive Master of Global Management for Space Leadership. And this is Thunderbird doing what we did in 1946 when we invented the international trade degree out after World War II and coming out of the Marshall Plan. We're now inventing the first interplanetary business degree. And what the goal is to bring the technologists and the business people together. A lot of the power that you saw in Silicon Valley, that drove Silicon Valley, and this can be recreated anywhere in the world where you have visionaries like those that are with us today, is to put together the business school with those crazy technology-driven undergraduates out of the engineering schools and let those sparks fly. Because you need to marry the business use case with the technological capability, or really the other way around at times. But it's a virtuous feedback loop. The other thing that is really important is that in Silicon Valley, out here in the San Francisco Bay Area, we had this beautiful crucible for entrepreneurship of two of the best universities in the world. I believe my alma mater, Cal, still beats Stanford in everything. And that's what my story, I'm going to stick to it. And you had the two universities, and you had 4 national labs: Lawrence Livermore National Lab, Lawrence Berkeley Lab, Stanford Linear Accelerator, and NASA Ames down in Mountain View. And that combination of top-notch business schools, top-notch engineering capabilities, coupled with these infrastructural capabilities, created this virtuous feedback loop that became a crucible for technology development that sustained and driven the tech sector for the last 40 years. None of that happened by accident. It was careful, critical investment and enablement by both government and industry working together. So the public-private partnership is critical to draw these amazing technologies out of the university. What we need, and my recommendation moving forward, is we need space accelerators attached to every relevant engineering school in the world. And so I know there are many people in the Islamic world from universities listening to us today, and I would urge you, at Thunderbird, through the Space Foundation, we're eager to work with you and help create those capabilities and draw out that amazing engineering and scientific technical talent, and sift through that dirt, find those diamonds that can be polished by the business use cases and move this forward. So, that's kind of my key recommendation, is to look for ways to create these crucibles in your own ecosystems around the world.
And you mentioned the Wild West, and I like that you mentioned that. That's an example I use as well. But of course, with the Wild West came risk. With Silicon Valley came risk, and very much in America, you have that entrepreneurial spirit, that ability to take risks. And if you fail, you're not a failure. You didn't find a way of doing it correct. But in other cultures around the world, there's a different mentality to failure. Certainly, I speak from the UK and Europe as well. What do you think could be done to generate those ecosystems which will allow less of an adversity, less of a fear of failure, to allow that to happen? What more do you think can be done culturally?
So one of the key things is to support, through the right type of financing markets, the technical innovators. In many countries in the world, if you have a failed company, until that failed company gets sorted out, you cannot start another company. I know this because I've helped colleagues through this in Germany, for example. Europe is famous for that. I believe Australia and New Zealand have similar issues. That needs to be sorted out by the government. They need to directly get rid of that. There needs to be a way to enable people to fail fast and fail well. If that's one thing that you learn out of Silicon Valley, in particularly software engineering and quick loop hardware engineering, is that you want to expect failure, you want to engineer to failure, but you engineer to fail well so that you learn critical things. And that becomes this quick march towards success. The cultural things are always challenging to overcome, but what can be done is by creating the right type of finance networks through, the banks, government, perhaps,
specified amount of time will definitely amplify the research gain and accelerate the progress of the research gain, hence culminating the students and researchers with collaborative opportunities which are given by different organizations like SGAC, SSPI, and TODERS will definitely get them more involved into space research and entrepreneurship. Because these organizations, they provide proper mentorship, they have mentor-mentee programs, as well as network for collaborations, which brings resources and funding, which is a major hurdle for any researcher globally. That's the idea of, I think, the collaborative environment should be. And the mentors and mentees should be ready to face all these hurdles together, and it will have a great impact towards space exploration and research. And all the researchers, they'll feel more flexible and more open to the new challenges to dive into.
So you mentioned new challenges there, but in terms of success stories, what success stories have there been throughout your career which is enabling this collaboration between different disciplines to drive forward the entrepreneurial space race?
Yeah, so basically when I was working with SGAC, I was working for a development of a CubeSat, and it was a collaborative research which was done by most of the researchers which were from Caltech and Georgia Institute and from SGAC. So I myself found this mentorship program and collaborations very helpful in my career to have research papers and research outcomes which are actually giving more perspective towards space exploration for my career. So I feel the mentorship programs and these organizations which give you a platform to connect with another researchers globally, it gives you more limelight and focus towards your research globally.
Okay, well, I would love to continue with questions, but we've got to move on because we've got so many of you to speak. But what I'm hearing though is it's positive. There is that positive. There's almost so much opportunity. It's a way of
it's really I can say there are a lot of opportunities. Only thing is all the researchers, they should be open to dive into it, and the mentors which are actually mentoring those researchers should be open-minded, and they should give them platform to work with other researchers so that they have their own views and own perspectives towards their research.
So it's all about having an open mind, and it goes back to what Dr. Kathy Thornton had said about this, not being so linear with our thinking, and I think it can translate to so much of what we're doing in the space sector right now. I'm going to bring in Dr. Rashid Yazami, who is an engineer and inventor. He's from Morocco, but he's not in Morocco, he's in Singapore at the moment. Dr. Rashid, can you just explain what the current situation is like from your perspective, and what more can be done to enable this entrepreneurial mindset for researchers?
Okay, well, thank you very much, Sarah. First of all, let me address my warm thanks to His Excellency, the Dr. Salim Al-Malik, the General Manager of the ICESCO, and also to Mr. Mohammed Sharif, the Chairman of this event, and also to Zineb Iraqi. She's the head of General Secretary of the National Commissions here in Rabat, Morocco. So anyway, yeah, to answer your question, actually, I started my career as a scientist. I worked for the National Science Research Center, CNRS, in Paris, in France. And the CNRS allowed me actually to spend some sabbatical years in California. And I joined the California Institute of Technology in the year 2000. And that was a turning point in my career, because you may know that Caltech is managing also the patent portfolio of the JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory of NASA. And this is where I interacted with my colleagues, researchers in NASA. And in the beginning of the 2000 year, there was the program to send the two rovers to planet Mars, Opportunity and Spirit. And I was a part of the team who actually was following the test on batteries that will be powering the two robots in the two rovers on Mars. And actually, according to the previsions of the NASA scientists, the robots will last only 4 months. But Opportunity at least lasts for almost 10 years, more than 10 years, from 2004 to 2018. And the lithium batteries work very well. Okay, so I mean I'm talking about lithium batteries because I'm one of the co-inventors of the lithium battery, and this is the reason probably I was invited to work with my colleagues in Caltech and in NASA. So my interaction with Caltech was absolutely incredible, because this small university, small-sized universities, has been always ranking among the first top universities in the world. And I had actually good interaction with the Caltech Office of Tech Transfer, where they all the patents or the inventions are brought by researchers from both Caltech and the JPL. And actually, this is where I learned that there is a way to have a transition between being like a basic researcher and entrepreneur. And the head of the Office of Tech Transfer in Caltech encouraged me actually to start my own company in California, and that was in 2007. And since then, I've become like a serial entrepreneur. Now in Singapore, I'm running 6 companies, not only in science. One of the company is about salsa dance. Okay, so that's another activity that I have brought here in Singapore. But anyway, the thing is that my personal experience is that sometimes, as a researcher, you pose a problem and you try to solve it, and it's not always obvious to find a solution. Sometimes it's a matter of serendipity. You know, you are looking for something and you discover another thing, and that's all very beautiful. Because today I'm still working after more than 4 years in battery research, and there are still many problems that has to be addressed, especially that we are having this transition between, you know, internal combustion cars to electric vehicles in the future. So we expect that in the next 5 years or 10 years, the proportion of electric vehicles will be increasing in our roads and streets and so on. And I can tell you, China, which is very close to Singapore, I mean, I was there before the COVID many times, and I could, you know, witness that this is transition. The taxi drivers, I mean, from the airport to the hotel are all electrical in Shenzhen and in Shanghai and in Beijing. And now it's coming to Europe and the United States with the Tesla, the most famous company. So anyway, many of the problems are still pending, like safety, how to make batteries safer. And that's a very important aspect that we have contributed to solve. And also very important is the fast charging of batteries. As you know, if you go to a gas station, you can fill your tank in like 10 minutes or less. And that gives you something like 600 plus, you know, kilometers to drive. And today, there is no technology that enables you to charge your battery in less than 1 hour, okay, and give you the autonomy of like 500 miles or something. So we somehow recently solved the problem of the fast charging. We have now continuous tests on batteries that can be charged in less than 10 minutes. That's and many major companies in Europe, in the United States, and here in Singapore, we are transferring our, you know, technology to them through licensing. Of course, as entrepreneur, I need to see whether I can attract investors and sell them the technology. And sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's quite hard. But anyway, this is some of the aspects actually when you move from academic, you know, activity to entrepreneur. You have to learn a kind of new language, the language of you know, entrepreneurs and investors. They have totally different mindset. They are looking at return on investment and what will be the problems, what will be the issues, and so on. So anyway, it's a very exciting life experience as a scientist to become an entrepreneur. I'm 68 years old now, and I'm very happy to go to my office every day at 8 a.m. working on, you know, trying to solve problems, trying to convince Singapore government to help us, and also other governments in Europe and so on. So anyway, it's a long path, but I think it's so exciting. And at the end of the day, when you see billions of people using a cell phone and you have your invention in your cell phone, you feel very proud, okay? So that's the message I want to pass you.
Well, I love that you mentioned about learning a new language and how for scientists, you know, learning that entrepreneurial mindset is like learning a new language. And of course, you touched on batteries. We have these to thank for you. But just going back to a point that Tahir made actually, which is about the space accelerators within university. And do you think that is something which would work in enabling academics to learn this new language, to learn this language of business and having this cross-pollination? And are there, very briefly because of time, any tips that you can give the next generation of scientists who potentially will need to become entrepreneurs to drive this field forward?
Well, I think learning is making mistakes and correcting mistakes and learning every time to improve, you know, because it's not obvious. I mean, for scientists to talk to an investor, it's not, we don't have the same language, obviously. So this is something that you learn as you, you know, experience this transfer of technology between academia that has the patents to the entrepreneur who will put their own money and help you actually develop your business and create more opportunities for jobs and making money. So I think personally, as a Moroccan, we have something in Morocco that we are naturally kind of entrepreneurs. We like to negotiate prices. We like to, convince people to buy things and so on. So this is part of our DNA, but it helped me very much because I tell you, Sarah, my first, I would say business, I was 8 years old. I had a small, candies and chewing gum or something like that I can sell to kids, and I could make my own, money when I was 8 years old. So this is something that, of course, just learning how to deal with the clients, how to speak to them, how to make them, how to say, they like you and they want to work with you for long term and so on. So anyway, this is something that is very personal, and also it may have, an entrepreneur may face many failures, but they never have to give up. Everything you can continue and, improve yourself until, you get something absolutely incredible.
I love that, and as someone who spent many a time in Morocco, I know exactly those sales techniques, and I love that nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit, which actually I think a lot of young people do have, and then it kind of gets taken away from them in academia. Obviously, we could talk to you for hours, but I'm going to bring in our next speaker. It's Professor Dr. Arsad Salim Bhatti, who is from Pakistan. And Arsad, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Everybody is hearing me. Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me start by saying assalamu alaikum and good afternoon and good morning wherever you are, whatever time zone you are in. With respect to the day, I would like to start by reading a translation of verse 33 from chapter 55 of Quran. This is very interesting, and this is related to right to the space exploration. O company of jinn and mankind, if you are able to pass beyond the regions of the heavens and the earth, then pass. You will not pass except by authority from Allah. So this is very interesting. But now, my understanding of this authority is the authority which you get as a result of knowledge, expertise, and passion rewarded by the Almighty because of your hard work for getting this knowledge and expertise. Now, I see this space science. Before I go further, let me say, I am a physicist by training, and I've been involved in the university for more than 30 years as a teacher, researcher. I've done many research projects. One thing which I never did and never thought until I went to Korea a few years ago was the entrepreneurship, how I can market my research and how I can use my research to generate funding. I'll come to that one later on, and that is one of the key issues in the developing countries. So I feel my participation in this panel discussion is to highlight the problems, the difficulties faced by researchers in the developing countries. Since morning, we're hearing success stories from the West and the developed countries, but we need to think about the situation in the developing countries. Can we develop the similar ecosystem which we can develop in Europe or in America, in Asia, or in countries like Pakistan, or in Islamic countries which are still developing? So I see space science is an interdisciplinary field of science and technology, and it requires people with multiple skills, or as we are knowing since morning, the key word is the team effort, where we have people with different skills joining hands to do specific job, and in this case is the space exploration. So, and I feel is the space exploration is going to be another area which will lead to the next generation of technologies and inventions for the mankind. I see this one similar to CERN in Geneva, where we have a large particle accelerator or large hadron collider installed, where more than 35, 40 countries scientists and engineers, they work together to understand the creation of the universe. So out of many, many outcomes from that research,
I think we lost the connection. Wasim?
used in medical imaging devices like MRI. So I see countries like Pakistan, they might not be doing the space exploration as the USA or European countries, but then the allied technologies which are which accompany the space exploration are the areas where we can contribute and we can convert our researchers or train them to become entrepreneurs. So what we need to do is to develop an ecosystem based around the space science and technology, get researchers from the universities involved, finding their interested allied technologies in these space technologies. Now the problems is that we feel in our researchers in the universities is the attitude problem, the converting research into some kind of application, the transition to make that one. We are all shy or shy of taking this step, which can help generate funds for us. So what we need to do is we need to develop ecosystem, maybe taking advantage of the developed countries, but specifically for developing countries, looking at the problems or hurdles which researchers see. One of them is the funding, scarcity of the funds from the government. Absolutely no industry available. Okay, the industries in the developing countries which can fund research which can lead to space science and technology, we don't have here in our country. And then I think the knowledge related to space science and technology needs to be open. One of the speakers, I remember, said that in 60s, 70s, this space exploration was related to only to defense or to the government. Now, many private companies are coming up with the businesses. We have heard Professor Bronson, Sir Bronson from UK, trying to do space exploration. There are missions which have been planned to take people to the space. We need to have the businesses in our region, or our researchers needs to be connected to those businesses in the West or in the developed countries. And if we want to develop an ecosystem which can sustain not only the research, but their outcome, and it can also create opportunities for students and young brains to participate in these activities. So this is...
And how do you think we can go about doing this? Because it was me who mentioned about it was about 2 governments, now it's multiple countries, but obviously multiple companies, but obviously a lot of businesses don't want to share what they're doing. So what do you think needs to be done to enable this to support the developing world? Because a lot of what we do in space is about life on Earth. Most of what we do in space is about life on Earth, and the developing world has the potential to benefit in a huge amount. What more would you like to see?
I think the first step has to be like developing links between the government. So these are the areas we want to collaborate. And once this collaboration is established, for companies to invest in developing countries is a big risk, because the first problem they see is, will they be able to get a required skill set, human resource in those countries to do specific jobs? Secondly, is there technology available to perform the tasks which that company requires? So these are 2 big issues. I think that can only be addressed from the government level, from 2 governments or 3 governments, they are joining hands, and then the people coming into that one. For example, I give you example of CERN, where Pakistan has become its associate member 5-6 years ago. Before Pakistan was not, the time when Pakistan was not member of the CERN, any of the company from Pakistan was not legible to go for tendering, for doing the jobs in CERN. But once the government of Pakistan signed MOU or agreement and became the member of the CERN, then it opened the doors for the businesses from Pakistan to participate in giving solutions. So that's very important. The government needs to decide this is the area, and we know since morning space science has actually all the technological areas associated with it. You name it: artificial intelligence, unarmed vehicles, drone technologies, cybersecurity, you name it, big data, image processing. So there are all these sub areas where we have this expert people, expert researchers or professors working in the universities, which they can become part of a bigger project or bigger initiative, and that can lead to increase the confidence of the private industry from abroad to come and invest locally.
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to have to leave it there because of time, but I'm going to bring in now Basuti Gertie Below, who is from Zimbabwe. She's an educational technologist at the Africa University. Basuti. And please tell me I got your name correct.
Yes, you corrected. Yeah, you spelled it very correct. Yes. Good evening, everyone. I thank you for inviting me to the ICESCO Space Symposium. So I'm working as an endowed chair educational technologies at Africa University in Zimbabwe. So my idea on the space and entrepreneurship is that if you look at the space itself, exploration is expensive. And also space exploration is complex, and also different countries, they have different policies on the space or the use of money. So when I say space is expensive, is that for an individual to try to come up with a company that can work on space, it needs money, more money to create some tools or also to do some exploration and research. So that's why sometimes it's very difficult for companies to come up or to do space exploration or space entrepreneurship. And also, if you look at the policies, some countries or in other regions, you find that most of the researchers, they work for the government. You can't work for yourself like in your own company as an individual. And if you work for the government, so you find that everything is managed by the government, and there are policies that protect each and every worker. Like you have to work and be a full-time job, full-time worker in the company or in the university only, without even giving you another opportunity to work, like have a multiple jobs. And also for space science, for us to transfer like education into entrepreneurship, I think the researchers have to also look at the needs of the society, what the society needs per region. If we need satellites or need imagery or need internet communications, so researchers have to develop tools that addresses challenges of the society. That's where we can transfer from research to entrepreneurship. For example, and education system also is very important because we have to look at the quality of education that is in the system. If we are still using the old education system for the 20th century, and you find that that one is too manual or is analog. And if you look at the current situation, we are in the 21st century where the world is digitalized. So by looking at it, so now we have to improve our education system. If we improve our education system, we have to know exactly what to teach. Looking at space, if you look at space, if you look at space application, sometimes find that it can cover an entire world rather than maybe focusing on an individual country or individual small area. So space technology can be a base or can be the pillar for researchers to start their entrepreneurship there. For example, if we can introduce this space science technology at primary level, tertiary level, that's where the foundation is. Because these students will grow up knowing what to do, what to select, what to design, and so on. And also, we can include these young children in the system so that they grew up with space, knowing the word of space, knowing the definition of space, and also including the business. So we will find that somebody with an experience can do much better. Somebody who developed a passion at an early age, you find that can do much better than somebody who start to, or who is being taught what to do at an old stage. For example, here in Zimbabwe, at Africa University, like I said, I'm endowed chair educational technologies at Africa University. We have realized that space application is very important. And if you look at space application, like I said, it is expensive. We are proposing now to use the unmanned area vehicle technologies like the drone technologies to provide us with very high resolution data to monitor our resources. So, and also we have proposed, we are at the stage of proposing the degrees, first degrees that addresses or that can address the application, like space application. Students can learn the basics of space application, like geographical information systems, global navigation systems, and the remote sensing, and so on. So we are about to start our program, and I would like to invite all who are interested that the time that we are starting, you are welcome. If we can work together as a team, we can achieve more. Thank you very much. That's what I can do for now.
Thank you so much for that. And just quickly, before we move on, can you just explain how much appetite there is across the continent of Africa, and perhaps in Zimbabwe in particular, for space entrepreneurship? How much potential there is that's currently going untapped?
There's a great potential in Zimbabwe and in Africa as a region, because if you look at our region, we are still starting, we are still like at the grassroots of space technologies, because if you look at the space agencies in the African region, we are still few. So, and also the knowledge and skills of space application. So we need more skills, outreach, and so on. And also, if the developed country or those countries that have access space, knowledge of space, can launch some space systems or some partnership in Africa, we can do much.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to welcome in Manuel Natumba. Manuel, can you just explain the situation from your perspective and current hurdles you face, and not to rush you, but if we could do it in a reasonable speed, that would be fantastic because of the timings we're currently on.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much. I'm Manuel Chumba, co-founder of TODAIRS, Transparent Organization for Aeronautics and Space Research. I'm also Regional Partnership Manager of SDAC, the Space Generation Advisory Council, where we try to channel opportunities from space industries to students and young professionals. So yeah, I would like to say that I'm really honored to be a panelist here today, especially in presence of His Excellency Chick Modibo, because when I was growing up, I remember we used to read a book about his work when he was working at the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a book named Navigateur Interplanétaire, the Interplanetary Navigator, which gives me some inspiration to also explore the space industry. So thank you so much for that. So for the discussion, I would like to bring 7 main points. So the first one is it's important to have a space awareness. We need to let people know what space studies is about. We need to let people know that it's not about space studies is not only about engineering, but it's also about space commerce, it's about space law and policy and the different aspects. And also it's important to bring government, universities and industries together to collaborate on different programs. And the third point is the importance of technology business incubation programs. It's an option that universities and government and industry, like I said, can collaborate on. And it's really important when we talk about space entrepreneurship. The fourth point is the importance of intellectual property for investments and funds. It means if you have a new idea that you want to develop as invention, you need to secure your idea through patents, and maybe sometimes you need to get some copyrights. Otherwise, it won't be possible for investors to invest in your startup. And the fifth point is the importance of technology transfer and the market studies. So it's like you can have the idea, you can have the invention, but if you don't know how to turn your invention into some innovation, or if you don't study the market, like if we take Africa, what is needed in Africa, I would say that most of African countries are not looking for like to launch something to Mars, I don't know, not in the upcoming 2 years or 3 years. So obviously they would want something that could be applied in the sustainable way for sustainable development or digital transformation. So it's like it depends on your region. You should study your market and know exactly what is needed for your market. The sixth point, I would say the importance of global collaboration, which is really important because, for example, for developing countries, they need to collaborate with developed countries where they have more capabilities in space so that they can channel opportunities and bring them to their citizens. My last point is the importance of having a roadmap, a long-term goals. Like we need to have long-term goals. We need to know where we are, where we want to go, and the STAC, Space Generation Advisory Council, and TODARS, the Transparent Organization for Aeronautic and Space Research, we follow the roadmap of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It means we work toward different projects, but we want to focus those projects on to bring sustainable development across the world. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Those are fantastic points. And I've got here on my notes that you're actually the world's youngest researcher and innovator. Is that correct?
Not quite correct.
Oh, well, this
actually.
The point I wanted to bring up with this is that you're a young person entering into this field. And I think maybe 40 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, people who wanted to work in the space sector wanted to work for big government organizations, but now there's opportunities to set up your own startup and to be a space entrepreneur. What is most exciting for you about what's developing for this field of research and entrepreneurship over the next decade and that you can be a part of?
Sure. So I would say that I'm one of the youngest inventors in the African space industry. That's the correct version. So,
I just upgraded you.
So yeah, I would say that it's important for the younger generation to know that they should know how to secure their ideas. I would say that's the most important way. If you have some idea and you don't know how to secure it, you are just sharing it online, then who will invest in what you want to do. It means it's important to have patience and to know when to keep the information and when to leak the information. It's important to secure through through intellectual properties, but also it's important to look out to the older generation, how they are doing it, and look for advices from them. Because if you see that at Todairs, those who are actually running Todairs, it's the board of the directors, and they are all chairs, and they have more experience, and they are guiding us in the way we should go for sustainability in space. So it's important also to look up to the older generation, learn from them, and innovate. Thank you.
I think there's a wonderful tips that actually I think all of us can take for our own life and career experiences. Now I want to bring in Sahit Reddy Madara, who is from the UAE. And Sahit, if you could just give us your perspective on the current situation for researchers and what more you think can be done and any success stories.
Okay, hello everyone, and thank you, Sarah, for it. I'm currently working as the space tech consultant stage at the Euroconsult Paris office headquarters over here, and I'm also the UAE's national point of contact for the Space Advisory Council in support of the United Nations Program on Space Applications. Okay, when we are talking about, we have been discussing about a lot of topics right now today, but when you go to the origin of it, when you start from the roots, the entrepreneurships, according to me, should start from the schooling itself. Because if you see the syllabus of the current system, it's been from decades. Just in the past 5 to 10 years, there's a huge amount of technological differences have been there from machine learning, data science, artificial intelligence, and so much which is going on so far. And when you see from Europe to US to Asia to the Middle East, there's a huge amount of education difference. If you see in Europe, in universities, for example, there's lots of industrial collaboration. It might be professors coming from the industry teaching in the real world problem solving skills. But if you see in some of the countries, different developing countries, it's still the same traditional way. That has to be changed as well. And recently, University of Oxford also have conducted a survey where they found out that there's a huge amount of skill polarization, which is going to be there in the next 15 to 20 years. When you see there will be a lot of people who are very highly skilled and who are very less skilled, but there is no people in between, and that's going to be a problem. So that skill gap should be filled. That's one of the most important things. And that's the main reason why, for example, if I can tell about one of the universities which is doing pretty well in Russia, which is called Skoltech, they are as part of the syllabus and admission criteria for masters itself, they said that like whatever thesis you produce out of your degree, they also help you out in giving you the entrepreneurship skills throughout the course. And once you pitch your thesis, they will also ask about how it can be used in the real world and what's your entrepreneurship idea, how are you going to do it. So you're obliged to do it as part of your coursework, and that's one of the wonderful things they're doing so far. And also if you're looking in the developing countries, so far there's a lot of talented youth, but there are very less people to guide them. So the mentors, and to find the mentors is pretty hard for them. So there should be someone to guide them. So there are a lot of organizations, as we discussed today, such as SJC, AIAA, the World Space Week Association, which is part of the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. And so we have a lot of opportunities there, but we just need to know how to approach it. That's one of the most important things. And when we are talking about 21st century, we should be able to learn, unlearn, and relearn. That should be one of the skill sets we should actually develop within ourselves. And if you're also talking about the space entrepreneurship, there is a lot of people also say, why not focusing on fixing our current planet? That's one of the most important things. But just imagine we are all in a cave, for example, and I would say that I would like to go out and explore in valley and hills, and then somebody comes to me and say no, and you cannot do that. But we have a problem within the cave itself. We got to fix it. That that's the high priority, but it means you cannot go out of the cave, but it does not make sense. That means that even you know that there's a lot of problems within the planet itself, but we need to go out into outer space and explore to get more knowledge what's happening there as an alternative. So if you look at even in the entrepreneurship perspective over here in the universities for researchers, I see a lot of professors who are very advanced level, who really have amazing ideas, but they're really lacking the skill set of entrepreneurship. Even if it's not only about students or young researchers, it's also about experts in the field who are lacking the skills, and they're pretty straightforward. They're telling that I have the skill set of the research, but I don't know how to pitch it to the investors. It's pretty hard. So I think we should be able to learn and relearn as per the technological advancements are happening. We should adapt ourselves towards it and go forward.
I think you raised a lot of fantastic points there, particularly the one about why we're doing this. And it reminds me of a speech that the Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins made in Congress when he talked about how on the way to the moon, the Apollo spacecraft was rotating like a chicken on a barbecue spit. And they had the choice, the astronauts, the crew of Apollo 11, which way to look back at the Earth, of the past where they came from, or to look forward to the moon and the future in terms of where Apollo 11 was about to land. And they looked both ways, and that's what we need to do in space exploration. We need to look back and protect Earth and use space science to protect Earth, but we also need to look forward to the future and continue to explore. Now, just to bring up on one of your points, and you talked about the researchers who don't understand how they can translate that into ideas and how there's not enough mentorship in Africa, for example, and in other developing countries. Do you think there's a plethora there of untapped potential which could actually disrupt the entrepreneurial space if we're able to access it and access these people in the correct way? And I ask you very kindly to be very brief with your answer as well. Such a big question, but a brief answer if possible.
Yes, as you know, there are a lot of organizations which are dealing with space entrepreneurship, and as well, especially if you're talking about space, there are specialist organizations and even a lot of universities which are working in that space. So one of the hurdles for a lot of students is that there are opportunities, as we have seen, but they don't know where to find these opportunities. So that's one of the most important things which I would like to focus upon, and the leaders of the countries. I think, and one of the most important thing is space education or space sector. It's not only about competition, it's mainly about collaboration, because it's a pretty small industry. And when you go, for example, when you go to conferences or any big events, you see the same faces always.
Yeah,
most of the time.
It is that, or you see them virtually now in 2021. Hopefully soon you'll see them in person. I'm going to have to leave you there, but it's fascinating points that you raised, and I'm just going to bring in our last speaker, who I believe is here, but we clarify if not, Professor Fatima Zahora Ilfan. No, I can't see her on Zoom. So in that case, we've only run slightly over. I just wanted to thank all of our incredible panelists for coming together today and discussing this, because if we are to succeed in space exploration, you know, it is truly a global thing, and we need to be united in what we're doing. We need to no longer think of countries or companies as defining space exploration, because what we're doing is greater than any one individual nation or any one individual company. And I think there's a huge amount of untapped potential and a huge amount of opportunity to come from nurturing that entrepreneurial spirit in so many people who are in the academic community, in the research community, or who might not yet realize that the project they're working on can also be used in space exploration. And I think my favorite quote is from Zahir Ali, when he talked about this as being like a new Wild West, and the opportunities are there for the taking. You've just got to find a way to find them, a way to take them. And I want to thank everyone for having me today, and all of our great panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah, for
Sarah.
the nice the moderation of
Thank you,
this
Sarah.
excellent session. We are running late, so I would just we have the Professor Rashid and Dr. Cass from the strategic department from ICESCO. We would like to give the very short, that what strategy should the universities opt for the entrepreneurship? Very short and quick, please. The same question would go for you, please.
Merci Dr Sharif et professeur Rahil. Par rapport à cette question de la stratégie des universités par rapport à une stratégie de l'espace, mais moi je voulais vous raconter une anecdote que j'ai vécue. Quand j'étais très jeune, j'avais la certitude d'avoir voyagé dans l'espace. C'était quand j'étais jeune enfant, donc j'ai visité une exoplanète, une planète qui s'appelait Tétouan. Et Tétouan, c'était un voyage pour moi très long, c'était 5 heures de voiture. J'ai vu ça dans le film de Star Wars, de George Lucas. Donc c'est un film de Star Wars de George Lucas. Donc, et cette planète, il a filmé ce film dans une région de la Tunisie qui s'appelle Tétouan. Donc j'avais l'impression, après avec l'âge, cette déception de ne pas avoir visité l'espace. Donc j'ai dit, c'était un rêve pour moi, un jour je vais visiter l'espace. À travers ma spécialité, la prospective, je me suis intéressé à l'espace et au futur de l'espace. Le futur de l'espace dans l'université, il passe tout d'abord par une certaine pédagogie. Donc c'est important au jour d'aujourd'hui. Un des axes importants, c'est comment promouvoir cette culture d'anticipation à travers les scénarios possibles de développement de l'espace. Aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup d'idées reçues qui circulent sur l'espace. Par exemple, on voit qu'il y a beaucoup de conflits autour de l'exploration de l'espace. Nous, les êtres humains, on a fait de la Terre un espace de conflit. Donc, une des opportunités les plus importantes, nous, en tant que centre de prospective, c'est comment faire de l'espace un espace de paix et de dialogue entre les différentes civilisations. Donc, ça, le point le plus important. Le deuxième point le plus important, et à travers une approche entrepreneuriale, c'est que l'idée, elle est très simple. Aujourd'hui, quand on parle de l'espace, il faut parler des autres technologies à travers l'espace. Une des technologies la plus importante, c'est Internet of Things, l'Internet des objets. Et l'autre technologie la plus importante, c'est l'intelligence artificielle. Donc l'intelligence artificielle, elle va permettre à d'autres pays, parce que si on veut démocratiser l'exploration de l'espace, il ne faut pas que ce soit seulement l'œuvre de pays riches, mais l'œuvre aussi d'universités de pays assez pauvres. Donc l'intelligence artificielle peut être un accélérateur pour les universités pour explorer l'idée de l'espace.
Thank you. I was with my translation. Thank you very much. It is really very much the needed, this artificial intelligence and the space technology. It is very much interrelated with. Professor, your take on this, please, short.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you to all and good afternoon. So first I would like to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to present the Center for Remote Sensing application in the University Mohammed VI Polytechnic. So normally regarding this point, we at the university or at the center, we are normally looking at different points regarding the entrepreneurship and the incubator of new ideas and companies within the university itself. So we adopt a strategy within the university, which is first of all delivering a good program, especially in what Dr. Jose Wagner mentioned regarding the Earth to Space to Earth, which is Earth observation and application of remote sensing. So first we deliver a high quality program to the student. So we build a new generation expert in remote sensing. And then we also have a good relationship within the university between our researcher in the university and the other researcher in other university and also with the industry. So we have a kind of market screening. We know the ideas and finally we can create or develop this idea by creating a new services or product within the university itself. So we encourage this within the university. So we are doing, I think, well at University Mohammed VI. Thank you so much.